The following is a conversation with William Schoenberger. He is an ecologist, evolutionary biologist. He's full of a lot of interesting facts and just fun things to talk about. You'll notice our conversation bounces around a lot for that reason, and I kind of like it that way. As always, I hope you learned something, and if you enjoy this, obviously consider subscribing, but I'm going to stop doing that stuff and get right into it. One more thing, got to thank our sponsor, first ever, Brutiful Mugs. Brutiful Mugs. See what they did there? Huh? Wow. Wow. Check it out. Link in the description. It's a good time. I gotta get better at those. All right. Will, nice to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Welcome to the first episode of our little interview series we're going to be doing.
Happy to kick it off, man. I don't know how you're going to go from here, but whatever.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it's all terrible from here on out, yes. But setting the bar very high, very high. So you are a what I would label you a big brain PhD in the evolutionary biologist of sorts, right?
Yes. So evo biologist, so ecology, evolutionary biologist.
Evil biology, got it.
Exactly.
Good. Some of the funny stuff you were mentioning on your show, the Krillcast, behind the scenes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about game.
That's a gaming podcast, so
it's true. But you got so much information about spider sex and stuff in your head. We just gotta.
I like how that's how you remember me, as a spider sex.
It's true. Some of the things that blew my freaking mind the last time we
did you want to tell the guests what we're drinking?
Oh yeah, of course. This is something else we're gonna be doing, and that is not just drinking. I'm not saying we're gonna be drinking. But to keep it interesting is every guest I'm asking to have a drink if they would like, and then I'm going to try to make a similar drink if it's something, a concoction of sorts. Will took it easy on me here and went with a Blue Moon, so I got a comparable beer that I had downstairs at Newcastle, which apparently, according to people who like Newcastle, isn't a good beer anymore. This is a garbage beer now because they sold out, but I think it tastes fine. What blew my mind about last time when we talked, and you know where I'm going with this, is the study on the mouse, the 5 generations. And to kind of illuminate a little bit of it, I'll do my job, which is re-explaining something interesting I heard, but not remembering any of the terms, and just like kind of how it made me feel. So here you go. They took these mice, scientists took a group of mice, and they scared them somehow and played an audio sound at the same time. Or
that's my memory of it, yeah.
Okay, and then they bred these mice out 5 generations, and somehow the mice 5 generations later knew that sound associated with a fear response. Mm-hmm. And of course they controlled it with mice that weren't scared and were exposed to the same sounds, and somehow the memory of being scared of a sound.
So genetic memory. So when I brought this up to you originally, I was talking about, I asked you, do you have a phobia? And of course you said no, but right. Billy said, usually people have I have a phobia of spiders or something. Like sometimes it's really random, like you have a phobia of a dark room, say.
Right, okay.
Yeah, exactly. No reason to be scared of this dark room. You don't have a memory associated with it. Maybe you've concocted one, but really don't have one. And part of that, the reason why you're scared of it is something called genetic memory. They're just now tapping into this. The potential of this concept is mind-boggling. But, to test this kind of idea, the idea of genetic memory is that whatever your ancestor went through, it can be encoded in your DNA in real time, and that can potentially get passed on to your offspring. It's through epigenetics, and I can get into that later. But
I guess the bad part is I'm setting you right up here in the beginning with something that we don't even know a whole lot about yet. But I wanted to bring up just because I can't fathom how a sperm and or an egg, you might as well imagine both of them for all purposes at this time, but somehow that memory is there.
Yep. It's in the genetic code. So I think it's important to get into epigenetics later, but back to the mouse study. So essentially, again, they expose these mice to a fear situation, and I believe it's like they showed a color and they shocked them or something like that. And then they never expose them again to that color. And then, they have the control group, which only sees the color, but they don't get shocked. And then 5 generations out, and it's not that it stopped at 5 generations, they just stopped the study at 5 generations. So they could keep going.
So it could be like 10 or 15.
Yeah, or unlimited. The thing is,
how much do mice cost? Like, can you do this? Why don't you do this?
Yes, you could do this in your own
house.
Can
I do this? Okay,
yes,
great.
You totally could. You could replicate the study pretty easily. But these mice still had that fear response, and it was consistent. Like it wasn't even degrading. It was consistent throughout. So they had the same level of response. And it makes a lot of sense when you start thinking about like phobias, and also I was talking about the shared consciousness concept, where for whatever reason a lot of people have the same memories, or will think that they've lived another life, or have the same dreams. And part of that is they're sharing an experience from an ancestor, or at least this is where the logical thought process goes. And what's crazy about this, you could have the same genetic memory as your brother, or as your cousin, or as your second cousin, because that's how it got passed. So someone in your genetic line could potentially have that same genetic memory.
I can't remember. There's I think it's Hitchens or somebody like that says something along the lines of like, yeah, it's like in reincarnation, though, they're always a king or a princess or something. It's never like, yeah, I was a peasant. I remember that day. So.
Yeah, well, maybe you just don't. The thing is, there's a lot to be desired in this so far. Yeah, you pick the good parts, or the thing is, maybe for whatever reason that genetic memory didn't serve you well. So it was something that was bred out in the next generation. So it was actually a deleterious gene, or coding of that gene. And
like Assassin's Creed was like, you had to like just make shoes or something, or whatever kind of peasant job back in the day. Yeah, that'd be rough.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, I was talking about like piggyback genes, and I was talking before too. It's like there's a lot of crap in your genetic code that you don't need it. Like most of it's not read. They have no idea what it does, and some of that could be, a lot of it could be part of it, stuff you're inheriting and could have genetic memory is what I'm trying to say. And
that's where it could be hiding, because we don't actually, no one said like on a strand of DNA like, oh, this is the the mouse gets scared when hears sound color.
Well, we still don't understand how memories are formed, or like at least how it's stored. Like we still have not untapped that, or tapped into that, like how the brain really works. The brain is the most complicated system in the entire universe that we know of, and so genetics is right up there with just as complicated as the brain. So,
so when you say like a lot of the piggybacking stuff, like what? I guess that's not a good question, but what percentage of like DNA is that?
It changes. So I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, you only read about like roughly 10% of your DNA at any given time. So the rest of it is just there. And I mean, that's still a huge chunk. And like I said before, 2% of your DNA is actually virus DNA. So we can talk about that later too. There's like different parts that are read very rarely. So some parts of your DNA only gets read during certain situations. And there's the parts of the DNA that gets read all the time. And that's a very, very small fraction. So like 10 or less than 10%.
Interesting.
And the rest of it is not necessarily not doing anything. We just don't know what it's doing. So for a long time we referred to much of that DNA as junk DNA, and it's really just because we didn't know what it was doing. But now we realize like some of it gets chopped off, helps code RNA, and the RNA goes around and does things in the cell. And so we're starting to learn more and more about it. But right now, most of it we have no idea. It's essentially like the mapping of the bottom of the ocean. We know roughly like was it like 25% of the ocean?
Something like that, yeah.
That's essentially what we know of the DNA.
That's why I'm pretty sure that's where the aliens actually are.
Yes, definitely.
Hey, look, that guy on Rogan, the Fravor guy, he said that when he first saw that thing, that there was some waves in the ocean that looked like a big something submerged under the water. Who knows? You know what I mean? Yeah. Could be some aliens under there. That'd be a good place to have a little secret base.
I would totally be fine with it, yeah. I totally think that's a possibility.
Right. So. If you can travel interstellar, you can waterproof your craft too, probably.
Sure.
I would imagine.
Yeah. So that's how they train astronauts. I mean, they have them go in the pools and stuff.
True. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. Can we talk about 2% of your DNA being a virus? Because like what?
Yes. Yeah. So many viruses, how it works is essentially it'll invade your cell and it injects its own RNA or DNA directly into your genetic code. Essentially cuts a chunk out, inserts itself. And the thing is, like I said about the deleterious genes, if it doesn't actually do anything bad to you, there's no reason for your body to cut it out. So some of these viruses just get incorporated, and we have been replicating it. We just have had that dormant virus gene for so long that it just becomes part of us. So like it's several genes now. It's 2% of your DNA. And what's really interesting about this, as I alluded to before, is that 2% on the male genome actually is what codes for your baby's sex.
That's so crazy to me.
Mhm.
The viruses are the dead, like remnants of viruses that
Yep.
have injected themselves into our DNA are now somehow deciding the sex of our children.
Yes. In the end, they have won.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. That I just can't wrap my brain around that. That's a
Yeah.
lot of tiny stuff we can't even see, deciding a
Mhm.
lot of things that make
Make us us.
a
Yeah.
lot of other things. Right.
Yeah, and I mean that's of the DNA that we know of. I mean, there could be other sections that it could be more virus DNA. It could be other things that we've incorporated over the years. And I mean, like everyone knows, the mitochondria used to be an organism in and of itself, and it just got engulfed at some point, and now it's part of everyone's cells.
Like a powerhouse of sorts, you would
Yeah,
say.
hmm exactly. The hot
Right.
dog. That's how
I'm
I
proud.
describe
I'm proud of that. Okay, so I guess I've never thought of DNA like as anything more than just like a helix strand. So when you say like we only read 10% of it, or
Yeah.
do you mean like we only know what 10% of it says, and that is like the whole strand, and we only know what 10% of that
So
strand is, or like am I
well,
totally just
technically
imagining what it looks like?
we know the entire genome. We just don't know what most of it does. So we have run that, and we know the genetic code of all humans, or of the stereotypical human, which obviously everyone's a little bit different. But we only know that, like, for sure, like 10% is doing most of the work, at least what we see at a macro level.
Right.
Whereas there's still a lot of stuff going on in the cell that we always in science just chalk it up as randomness. So it's something like, it's essentially, I always say it's like the God factor, because we don't really know why it's happening. And essentially that randomness we're slowly learning is that other 90% of the DNA is helping with that randomness, like making sure the different molecules are actually bumping into each other at the right speed, making sure they're actually getting to the locations that they're supposed to, and the different electron chain transports and things like that.
Interesting. So, all right, talk to me about like last time you mentioned like RNA being part of DNA, and T cells and telomeres, and I don't know.
Okay, well, there's a lot of things there, so pick one.
Well, I guess talk to me about RNA and DNA and the relationship between the two. Like, what's the difference? Are they the same thing?
So it's deoxyribose, and then you have nucleic ribose, and then you have RNA. Just to make it simple, two-stranded, one-stranded. RNA is a fascinating structure, and essentially can code for everything that's going on in the body. So for the longest time, when we were talking about the origin of life, we were always talking about, well, how would DNA form itself? Because the way DNA works is it has to have something that reads it, and has to have something that unzips it, and it essentially needs other helper molecules to build it. RNA is not the same way. RNA can read itself, RNA can attach to itself, RNA can replicate itself. It's fascinating. I mean, there's also a lot of different types of RNA. So, there are like helper RNAs, there are the messenger RNAs. There are RNAs that are actually coding for some of the genetic material in your body. So for a long time, we thought it was only the DNA that was doing that, but come to find out the RNA can also create proteins that are doing work in the cells.
Interesting.
It's fascinating. Again, that's like we're at the very cusp of understanding what RNA actually does, because all the focus was on DNA, and then people started looking at those junk molecules and the junk DNA and realizing that there's also all this floating RNA that we kind of just like, it doesn't really do anything in the cell, but it's essentially doing a lot of the work in the cell.
You're almost saying it's one of the things that's like, I wouldn't say making conscious decisions, but like it's literally kind of deciding like, okay, we repair this, we don't repair that, we change this.
It's hard when you're looking at, especially when you look at proteins, and not like think that it has a consciousness. Like obviously, like if it has some kind of consciousness, it's not like a human conscious, but
yeah, I need to be careful with that word, I think.
Yeah, when you're looking at them, they do seem to be knowing what they're doing, and you can always break it down to like the chemical interactions, and you can like the folding and unfolding of proteins, and that's like what causes it to actually act the way it does. Is that when it attaches to certain molecules, it changes shape, and that changes it makes it do something, and then when it spits out a molecule, it changes shape again, so like it does something else. That's how enzymes work. That's why you can recycle enzymes, but when you actually watch them do that, if you try to like, it really does look like they know what they're doing. The thing is, it's fascinating to watch, and it's also fascinating to see this how precise they can be for something that obviously has no brain, shouldn't
And is this
know what it's doing.
something that we're observing, like you can watch this, like with a microscope, you can watch?
Yeah, not with a microscope. Yeah,
Or
much
some
more
sort of-
high tech stuff. Yeah, you can mark them, you can watch them fold and unfold. It's pretty fascinating, and you can also you can actually 3D model many proteins. So we know what molecules are in them. So you attach those, it makes a 3D shape, and you can make like this 3D model. And then when you attach it, like a different molecule to it, so like a carbon or CO2 or oxygen or something like that, to hemoglobin, it bends in a certain shape. So like that chemical reaction, you can actually see like it will cause things to move, and we can kind of predict how the shape changes, and then we can see that in real time with some proteins if they're big enough. Exactly.
What came first, the RNA or the DNA?
RNA is probably that's definitely the prevailing theory right now. Because, like I said, because RNA can replicate itself, it can do what DNA needs help to do. DNA can't do those things by itself.
So you mentioned, you keep kind of saying something about proteins, right? Like, so RNA has a relationship with proteins, or it can be a protein?
Yeah, so RNA can act like a protein sometimes. Like, that's really new stuff. So there's some really weird RNA. I don't remember, because everyone knows like tRNA, mRNA, but it's a new one. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, everybody knows everything.
Yeah. But those are like the ones you learn in biology
Right,
class.
yeah, true.
And then, so as far as protein, RNA can make its own proteins. So this is very new. And it can make its own proteins, which is kind of crazy. I believe that they have I think a tRNA and mRNA help with that process, but they still make their own proteins. And then the proteins, not all, like a lot of them, we don't know what they do yet. So it could be something like it's like maintaining cell structure. It's helping like attack viruses or something. We just don't know.
Okay, what is mad cow disease? It's pyrin, something like that?
Yes.
Pyrin, and it's a protein.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but I know it's terrifying because you can't get rid of it.
It's a rogue protein. That's the best way of describing it. So it's a protein that, without getting into too much of the specifics, it essentially just is no longer doing what it needs to be doing, and it starts attacking you and doing stuff in the cell that it shouldn't. So it's like instead of like a Navy SEAL, it turns around and is on the other team. Yeah, and again, that goes along with you can explain that away with the chemical structure is slightly mutated, so somehow a bond was broken, or somehow instead of CO2, O2 got attached to it or something.
Right, something happened to mutate it, or
and then that small change can change the overall bonding structure of the protein, because a lot of times proteins they're bonding to things. That's how they're interacting, and just that difference in bonds will cause it to be attracted to something else, and that attraction could, honestly, most of the time you don't notice it because it's not a big deal, but other times it will I'm going to attach to the polymers and the cell wall or your cellular membrane and start eating it. And then that's not good.
All right. Well, I think we did kind of promise the people some animal sex,
Yes.
Spider in particular. But whatever you're feeling, if you have anything, you can maybe share with the class here. Yeah. Oh, great, great.
Yeah, we'll start with spider sex. Okay, that's what everyone came for, is the spider sex.
True.
Make sure you put the timestamp in.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. All right. So spiders don't have penises. That's the first thing you need to know.
None.
None.
No spider has any penis. Yeah. There's not one.
None spider.
Errant 9-legged spider out there.
No, the only arachnid, I think it's arachnid. Now I can think. I'm pretty sure the only arachnid that does have a penis. Sorry, is the daddy long legs, or the harvestmen, and we can talk about them later because that's something I've actually studied very intimately. They do, and they're pretty large. So with spiders, they actually have something called pedipalps, which is essentially they're essentially like a second pair or another pair of legs in front of their mouth, and sometimes it helps with feeding. A lot of times it helps with display, so they'll have big fans or colors, and that's what you see tapping if you see a peacock spider or something.
Right.
Well, they actually essentially they produce their sperm right below their mouth, and they just swipe it up with their pedipalps, and then some spiders will just kind of box it in.
Oh, what? Box it in
into the female's genitalia. So
oh no!
and like
That's
probably in their chest. Like that would be very interesting for people to have to do.
that is a dance move.
But then I'm
You
sure.
gotta box it in, folks.
Yeah, and then some will actually will run by because I know everyone knows or has probably heard of spiders. The female spider will eat the male spider. So some spiders will just rub the chest and they'll run really fast by and they'll slap that pedipalp under, rip it off, and keep going. So the female's has no idea what's going on and they're just like, ah!
That's yeah. I'm not gonna say the word. Get demonetized. That's not consensual. Interesting.
No, it is not.
I feel like a lot of animal sex is just not
most animal sex
two-party system. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So okay, black widows. Do they call them that because they eat the male, or do they call them that because they kill people?
No, they call them that because they eat the male.
Oh, okay, but a lot of spiders do that.
So. Yeah, most spiders do, but there are some species where the male has come up with a really interesting strategy to avoid this. So there are some spiders that will wrap up presents, and it's called a nuptial gift. And they'll wrap up like a fly and they'll hand it to her and she'll like, oh, this is a wonderful dinner. She'll like slowly unwrap it and then she'll start eating and like very happily. And during that time, the male is like very, very quickly trying to mate. Wow. And he'll mate and as she's having, that meal and then he'll run away so she doesn't eat them. Some males are much more clever, and it's like, you know what, getting that meal is going to take too much time. I don't like cooking. I don't want to go to the store, pick this up. So they just instead they'll wrap up a stone, and they'll give the stone to the female spider. And these ones have to be very quick because obviously there's no eating. They have to wrap it up even like a lot more, and like she has to unpack it. And by the time she unpacks it, like hopefully he's done. But if she's not done and he's not done, then she'll essentially will eat them and like chase them like off the web, and she's super pissed.
Amazing.
And then there's another one. I don't think I told you that. Essentially, there's some species where the male essentially just sacrifices himself. So he just like runs right at the female, jumps in head first, slams his head into her mouth, and then like quickly like puts his abdomen against hers because their genitalia is right below their mouth. As she's munching away, he's like slowly pumping away.
Oh no. One last hurrah.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Still worth it.
I mean, I guess that's like that's how it works. The spiders that were willing to literally like jump in the other one's mouth and get eaten while pounding them got to pass along, and the rest of them didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I just imagine like one female and like 5 male spiders sitting around, and like all 5 of them are like, I don't know, bro. And one of them's like, you know what? I'm gonna let her eat my head. And they're like, no, Jerry, don't do it. No. And now everybody is Jerry's kids. Yep. All the spiders. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's fascinating about animal sex is there's almost always multiple methods within the same species. So you'll have like the predominant method, so like jumping in and letting your head get eaten, but then you'll have sneaky males where they're trying a new method. So this is completely jumping, but cuttlefish have 2 different methods of mating. So you have the one cuttlefish, which the male is like, the biggest, the baddest. He'll defend a little spot. He'll chase off all of or not the females, obviously, all the other males. And if she comes over, it's like, oh wow, you're pretty hot, pretty sexy.
Territorial thing.
Yeah, let me go into this cave that you're protecting. So he's like, oh yeah. So then he's fighting off all the big males. Well, now there's a new method where a male will pretend to be a female. So he'll come over and be like, oh, how you doing? You're looking so hot too. Let me go into your cave. And he's like, oh yeah, you're nice. You're much smaller than the normal male, so you must be a female. So he lets him in, and he'll mate with all the females that this guy has in his cave.
No way.
He sneaks out, yeah. So they actually looked down like the percentage. Like he only gets like 30% of the eggs fertilized himself, and the big male gets 70, but 30%. I mean, that's pretty good.
Right, and it's probably been going on for years and years and years. So usually the male will have multiple females in her cave.
Yeah, makes like a little harem. Mm-hmm.
You have any other nice...
Oh, I have tons. I have a whole list to remind myself.
Good. This is so great.
All right. Let's do we're not actually in Halloween, past Halloween, but still kind of a spooky month, November. Yeah, so bed bugs. I know I brought this up. I have some new ones for you too, but bed bugs. Bed bugs, essentially, there's always been a war between the male and the female. And it's gotten to the point where females no longer have a vaginal opening. The male, to inseminate her, just sticks his penis right through her abdomen.
What?
And then like ejects his sperm into her bloodstream, and they just float around, and then eventually they'll find her eggs.
What?
Yep.
Oh, and then she's fine?
Yeah, she's totally okay. I mean,
She's
I don't
just-
think she's fine,
Right.
but she
Wow.
lives through it
Okay, in the bloodstream
in
first.
the bloodstream.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's because it goes back to how, everyone thinks about like sexual selection, how like the female will choose the flashiest male. There's actually a lot going on there where females only want to be inseminated by the best male, and males always want to inseminate basically everything. So there's
Right.
an internal battle there where the female tries to prevent as much sex as possible, and the male tries to get as much sex as possible. So, like in the case of the bed bug, totally close up that vaginal opening, and the male's just like,
Nope.
whatever, YOLO.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, kind of back to, I guess, best of both worlds here. Sorry about that. Okay, so like, I remember you telling me something about when it came to reproduction and maybe arachnids, but I don't think it was necessarily only arachnids, but that, okay, so like a male mates with a female, but then somehow the sperm can block off other sperm or something.
So,
I don't.
yeah, this happens all over the place. Well, I'll give you an example of honeybees, just because I won't give. I'll just make it more general. I'll talk about honeybees later. So there's something called the sperm plug, and essentially,
Sperm blood. It's got a nice ring
not
to
blood,
it.
plug.
Oh, plug. Okay.
Yeah.
Much better.
So yeah, and essentially the way it works is when the male ejaculates, they'll put on all the sperm. Well, some sperm will continue their path and go to the egg, whereas a bunch of the sperm will sacrifice themselves essentially and create a wall, and they essentially create this barrier that prevents other male sperm from coming in. No one knows why these sperm form this way. Like, how do they know to do this? Why are they sacrificing themselves? Because they're giving up their chance of like passing on their DNA. And like, how do they choose which ones to go and which ones to stay back and fight? And then I also brought up the whole idea of super sperm, and like they can recognize their like fellow brother
Oh
sperm.
yeah, I don't understand. Okay, so to the first one, I don't want to push back, but I want to kind of. So maybe that is just something in the parent DNA that like their stuff coagulates or something different than others and it passed on. Unless does it look like they actually are making like an effort?
Yeah. Yes, because there's no difference between
What?
sperm. So, like, I mean, it's only half of your DNA. So, like, they all have that half. Why do some decide to stop and make this wall, while others are like, you know what, I'm going to keep going. And then it just brings it up to the super sperm, because again, this is like along that same question and conundrum. So, super sperm essentially is, in some species, the sperm will actually band together and they make like this giant snake sperm. So, like, literally, like you can actually see it with your naked eye in some species. It's freaking huge. So it's like thousands of sperm roped together, and then there's only one that still inseminates. So how does it choose which one gets to do it? And the rest of them are just helping, because essentially they're just fighting that current, and they're also trying to beat any competition to get to that egg. So again, all those thousands of
Can't
sperm are
understand that
sacrificing
either.
themselves. Besides that one.
In that case, I guess they don't have to be making a decision as much as like just the repetition of that, practice
Yep.
passed on the same DNA over time. And really, you're only versing that with a pool of similar genetics that none of their sperm were doing that originally.
Mhm.
So the first one that figured out, two of us together, and then everybody started going two together. And then
Yeah,
the
the
next
crazy
one
thing
that
is like
figured out
it's not
three or
like
four
we're
together.
making this decision. You have no idea that's happening,
Right.
and yet that is like a lot of animals like that. That's happening. It's pretty crazy. And then I was talking to like again, they recognize each other somehow, so they can recognize sperm from the same father, to the point where some sperm again instead of making a wall, they actually essentially go out and hunt, and they hunt for other sperm that didn't come from the same father. So they'll go and like essentially try to absorb a competer's kind of like a competition sperm.
What?
And again, you have to ask yourself, like, how did that evolve? It is honestly a fascinating question. And
Right.
again, people have looked at the DNA, looks the same. Don't know how this is happening. Like, why does some change and some like do like the normal path of the sperm?
Yep. What the fuck? They actually go and get the other. They like exterminate the ones that are not them.
Hmm. I mean, they do their best. I mean, they're also trying to exterminate them. So it's honestly kind of fascinating to watch because we can watch sperm under the microscope. So it's fascinating to see which ones are actually going to win.
Sperm wars.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's got a ring to it.
Yes.
All right, hit me with some more.
All right. Let's see. Well, I'll go with the background. So the reason why I have a duck as my background is because ducks are terrifying.
Oh no, I forgot. Forgot about the crazy thing you told me about their. Yeah, tell me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, so ducks are terrifying. So, they're all so cute. Everyone likes to raise like a little baby duck. You might think twice now. So ducks have spiral spiked penises. And it's a corkscrew, so it's very long, it's very spirally, and a lot of them have teeth. And male ducks are always raping the female duck. That's the only way they have sex. But to prevent getting inseminated by a male duck that she doesn't want to be inseminated by after being raped, is ducks have 3 vaginas. So the way this works is you have like one opening, but you have 3 paths. So one path goes to the eggs, and then the other 2 paths are just like dead ends. And if she doesn't like, is it called a cryptic choice? We don't know how she makes that choice, but she will divert that corkscrew, terrifying penis into a different vagina.
Oh my God! So
he thinks he's winning, but yeah.
Is there any correlation to like better looking ducks she lets breed, or like better genetic? Like,
there's a lot of studies
like
it,
that,
and like. Yeah, so there are some, but we don't know how she's making that choice still. And what's crazy is
that they do think that she's making an actual choice, though.
She's making an actual choice. And what's funny about this is that there's some species that have evolved a countermeasure to the 3 vaginas, and he has 3 penises. So I didn't tell you this one before, but there's 3 heads to the penis. So he always he's guaranteed to inseminate no matter what. Yes. You can look up pictures of this later, but it's
I did the first time you told me. I was like, no, that's not it. Oh, I haven't been to the park since.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So they're terrifying.
Yeah. 3 vagina duck. Sounds like a joke. Bad joke.
Yes. Yeah, but now every time you see that happening, it's funny because birds are usually so peaceful when they have sex. It's called a cloacal kiss, and they usually just like, that's it. But ducks have just, oh my gosh.
I've seen and heard a lot of commotion on the water.
Yeah, they get
and honestly, like it looks like he's drowning her sometimes.
Yeah, I mean sometimes it does drown. So, yeah.
That's not good, evolutionarily speaking. I don't think.
Yeah. Well, speaking of drowning in water and stuff, so otters will actually rape baby seals, and they'll kill them.
Okay, see, this isn't what we wanted to.
We can cut that part out. All right, back to the happy part. All right.
No, it's okay. Just killing baby seals. I think that literally is like the bar when you're talking about like the worst things you could talk about. I think like a baby seal is cute, and raping a baby seal.
If you look at a sea otter, sea otters are super cute and fuzzy.
They're supposed to be the cutest thing you ever saw.
Yeah. But
I can't tell Aubrey that.
Okay.
She will be very upset.
All right, well, here's a beautiful one. So leopard slugs.
I can't ruin otters for her. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Fine. So a beautiful one. Going from the rape to something that's much more consensual, and it's beautiful. Leopard slugs. So make sure you look this one up. So leopard slugs, essentially they have like a courtship that can last a couple hours. And essentially they're hermaphroditic. So they have both male and female genitalia. And one slug will lay down like a scent trail. And it's like, basically, I'm ready to get it on. But slugs can't really find each other, so it takes a while for another slug to come across that trail, and it's like, oh man, there's someone that's going to mate with me like on this trail. I got to find them, but they're both very slow, so it takes hours. Sometimes it takes longer than that to find each other. But once they do, they basically like touch and like, oh yes, you're the one. Let's mate. So they'll go up into a tree very slowly because they're slugs. They'll go over into a branch, and then they'll dangle from I think they come from a slime netting essentially, and then they both extend their penises, and they have these beautiful, colorful, like wavy fanned penises, and they wrap them together.
Oh, I'm clipping that.
Oh my gosh, that should just be the intro.
Careful, Dad.
The thing is, like, it is so beautiful to watch. Like, it's crazy how colorful they are because no one knows why they're colorful. What's the point? They have already made the choice to mate before they see the penis. And it just, It's so beautiful.
You think for a while, like it was like they got to that moment, and the other one was like,
Yeah.
no,
It's a little brown there.
no, no,
Yeah. No, but
Wow.
it's so cool.
That's
And
wild.
I used
And
to
so
show that
wait,
to my class all the time.
I kind of blanked out after how funny just clipping you out saying they extended their penises and it was beautiful or something is going to be. But what do they? How do they mate with their dicks?
Yeah. So
Essentially.
essentially, they just exchange sperm to each other, and then they bring it back into their bodies.
Also, I very much love that during that time you reminded us that they're still very slow because they're slugs.
Well, it is like you have to watch it sped up. It takes forever.
Right. Yeah, I bet. Time lapse.
Yeah.
I bet all the biologists were like, why did we go into slugs?
I know. And then the first person that
Terrible.
saw that's like watching a slug. He's probably having a bad day, and it's like, I'll watch this slug for a couple hours, and then suddenly it's like, oh!
Right.
It's an
I
epiphany.
imagine good science is patient, right? It
Yeah,
has to be.
exactly. That's exactly how it
That's
goes.
super interesting, though. So, yeah, why would they have colorful dicks?
No
We'll
idea.
we'll never know.
Yeah, hopefully one day we'll know, but right now it's like up in the air. It's just really
Right.
cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, all right, let's go back to the grotesque. So most sex is not super pretty, but I think the honeybees really take it to the extreme. So, I think everyone's familiar with the structure of a honey hive. Basically, you have the queen, you have all the female workers, and then you'll occasionally will have a drone, which is the male. And the males are actually haploid, so they come from unfertilized eggs, which is completely by the side of the point. But that's how you make them in bees. So they're actually fatherless. So it technically is a virgin birth. If you want to think of it that way, it's pretty cool.
So is it ultimately like, okay, so like in plants, I know a little bit about them. When like one branch of a plant turns hermaphrodite and it pollinates itself, it's an exact copy of that plant.
Yeah.
Ultimately. So like is the
sort of, but that will have a
male
complete set of
DNA?
The male DNA only has one set. So we have a duplicate. He only has one.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we're diploid, and the male bumblebee is.
But are his genetics identical to the queen's then?
Yeah, it's like So the queen has two sets. He only will get one set.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. Anyway, so when the no, it's fine. When the princess bee goes out, or it's called a gyne, or like a queen that hasn't been fertilized yet, they fly out on something called a nuptial flight, or a princess flight, just depends on who you ask. And
it's adorable. We'll go with princess flight.
Princess flight, okay. During that flight, they mate in midair, and the male has sort of evolved this. Maybe the female has evolved this, but basically, the female will twist, rip his penis out, and kick him. And he'll fall again. Like I just imagine him going, "Still worth it." And the thing is now she has that mating plug in there, and that will hopefully prevent other male honeybees from going in there and mating with her. However, like I said, there's always a counteraction, right? So the honeybees have little spikes on their penises, and they will actually go and try to mate, and they'll drag out that old penis with their spiked penis, rip it back out, and then they will try to dig out the sperm with the hooks on like the little shovel penis, try to grab it out, and then they'll inseminate.
No way.
Yeah.
So that's how you get like diversity in colonies. I mean,
yeah, that happens. Sometimes she only mates once. It depends on the species. Sometimes that plug is good enough. Sometimes like when they try to rip it out, it actually kills the female. Sometimes like the males are really good at ripping out each other's
are
dicks.
hives sending out males all the time just to like possibly impregnate
No, so it happens at certain ages of the colony. So it's not super well understood yet, even though we know so much about honeybees. Basically, it could be from the size of the hive. It could be there's a switch point where the female stops producing certain pheromones that prevent like baby queens from developing. And when that switch point happens, baby queens develop, and then the males are like happen at the same time.
Oh wow, okay. She stops putting a pheromone out, and that lets them become.
Yep. So all the worker eggs could have the potential to become a queen if they don't have this inhibitor pheromone placed on them. I think it's called the queen manipulator gland pheromone. It's QMP is what it is.
Interesting. Yeah. So okay, kind of in that same realm because I feel like they're just the bees of the ground, the ants, right? What's up with the princess? Like, okay, Tell me if I'm wrong or not, but the tree hoppers, is that what they're called? The tiny insects or something?
Mm-hmm.
Leaf hoppers, tree hoppers?
There's tree hoppers, leaf hoppers. Yeah, they're very similar.
They're all kind of look like little alphids, right? They're just like
Aphids, but yes. I like alphid, though. That's the name it should be.
Yeah, sorry. There's no L in it, is there?
No, there's not.
Aphid, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is I had to get some neem oil to get rid of them off my tomatoes this year.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You could also gotten ants. Oh, they might have, depending on the ant. The ant might actually try to tend them and farm them.
I thought that they were friends. Thought they had a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, tell me more about that, because I know.
Yeah.
The thing I got was really interesting, and I'll just let you tell me, because
so tree hoppers and ants have this intimate mutualism, and just to define mutualism is essentially when you have an interaction between two species that is beneficial to both. So you have a net gain for both parties involved. Instead of like a parasitism where like one is killing the other one, or a commensalism where one is benefiting and the other one is not affected. Mutualism is a very intimate association. It's actually one of the most common types of associations.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, in the animal kingdom. Well, tree hoppers and ants have this type of association, and basically how it works is the ants are farming the tree hoppers for their waste product, which is called honeydew. So it's their poop. This honeydew has lots of sugar in it, has proteins in it, everything that a growing ant needs. And basically they farm them. So they're milking these tree hoppers. And in exchange, the ants will protect the tree hoppers from any kind of enemy. So other ants, spiders, praying mantids, sometimes they'll try to attack birds, but they're not very successful at it. And so they protect them. But they also protect them from inclement weather. So tree hopper babies are so small that they can get splashed off the leaf by raindrops. So I've actually witnessed this myself, where you have these tree hopper babies on top of a leaf. It starts to rain, or it's about to rain, and ants will go up there, pick them up, and bring them back to the nest to protect them. And it's pretty funny when the ant species are actually smaller than the tree hoppers, because it'll take like 3 or 4 of them to pick up one particularly fat baby and bring it down. But
they're choosy. They're like, this one, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. So I actually saw this one where it got wedged between like a leaf and a stem, and it was really wedged in there. I don't know how it happened, but it took like 5 or 6 ants to like slowly like wiggle it out. Like it took them like 20 minutes to get this freaking thing out.
Like, let's go get a smaller one. No, that one. You know how much honeydew's in there?
I know. That's the blue ribbon cow.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Anyway, yeah. So the very intimate relationship. Obviously, they're feeding off these honeydew, and that's pretty much what they feed off the entire season. So when you have the princess flight for ants, where like all the new princesses are developing, and you'll have like hundreds come from one nest, they will pick up their own tree hopper, and they'll fly off with it to establish their own nest with this tree hopper.
Princess ant is a fertilized female ant, right?
So the princess, it technically is like, she's a princess before she's fertilized, and then I think it switches to a queen as soon as she's fertilized, but most people just like say that it's a princess until she starts her colony.
Okay, because it's a princess flight, right? When she leaves, when she's wow, and she takes a little tree hopper with her, so she can eat its poop while she establishes a new.
Exactly, and what's crazy about that is that they can pick out pregnant ones, so they know that there's a gravid tree hopper which has the eggs already fertilized. They'll take that one with them, because that way they know that it won't just be the one tree hopper; she'll have a whole bunch of them.
This concludes part 1 of our conversation with William. As always, I hope you learned something, because I sure did. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing. There is more on the way. That does help us a lot. And thanks again.